They filmed him before they ever learned his name. A man so large, the staff joked the floor groaned when he walked. A janitor with a baby strapped to his chest, mopping marble at 4 in the morning, while the richest people in the city stepped around him like he was furniture. They laughed. They posted it. They had no idea that the giant they were laughing at would one day be the only thing standing between their empire and ruin. His name was Juma. If you saw his face, the thing that would surprise you was how beautiful it was. Warm, open, kind in a way that made cruel people uncomfortable. He had eyes that forgave too easily, and a smile he gave to people who did not deserve it. And every night he carried his daughter, Ada, in a soft sling against his chest, because he could not afford anyone to watch her, and because he would not leave her, even if he could. Ada was 8 months old. She had cheeks like ripe fruit and a laugh that turned heads in a lobby built to ignore people. When Juma mopped, she watched the world upside down and grinned at strangers who refused to grin back. They worked inside the Hanvel Crown, the tallest, coldest, most expensive hotel in the city. 40 floors of glass and gold. And from the top 3 floors, a family ran an organization that people only spoke about in whispers. The Sabyuk Group. You did not say the name loudly. You did not look the family in the eye. And you certainly did not get in their way. Juma got in their way every night. Quietly, invisibly, with a mop and a baby and a back that ached. The people who worked for the family liked to remind him of his place. They flicked coins at his feet and told him to dance for them. They knocked over their own drinks just to watch him meal and clean them. One young man in an expensive suit liked to hold his phone an inch from Juma's face while he worked, narrating to thousands of strangers online. The fat janitor. The circus. Look how he smiles. He must be slow. Juma was not slow. Juma had once trained as a hospital orderly, back before life narrowed to this. Juma read 3 languages. Juma noticed everything. But he had learned that in a place like this, the safest thing a poor man could be was underestimated. So he let them laugh. What none of them knew was that Juma was running out of time. Somewhere across the city, a hearing was coming. Someone from his past wanted to take Ada away, and the only weapon they needed was his poverty. No money, no home that looked stable enough, no childcare. Every insult he swallowed for her. Every coin he saved for the day a stranger in a courtroom would decide whether he got to keep his own child. That was his mission. Not love, not revenge, just survival. Just Ada. By the way, if you have ever worked the kind of job where people looked straight through you, tell me where you are watching from in the comments right now. I want to know how far this story is reaching, because it belongs to people like Juma more than anyone. There was one person in that building who saw Juma, really saw him. Her name was Yuna. Yuna had married into the Sabyuk family 3 years before, and the family had been swallowing her slowly ever since. She wore beautiful clothes and lived behind beautiful doors and was watched every hour of every day. Cameras in the halls, a driver who reported where she went, a husband long absent, a position she never asked for. She was a possession dressed as a wife. But Yuna had not always been rich, and she had not forgotten how it felt to be invisible. The first time she saw the staff mocking Juma, she did something no one in that family ever did. She stopped. She knelt. She handed Ada a small, clean cloth toy from her own bag, and she looked Juma in the eye and said she was sorry for how they treated him. He did not know what to do with kindness. He had forgotten what it weighed. After that, it was small things. A nod by the service elevator, A coffee left where he would find it. A few stolen minutes on the rooftop terrace where staff were forbidden, where the city glittered below them and neither of them had to perform. She told him she felt like a ghost in a golden cage. He told her about Ada, about the hearing, about the fear that sat on his chest at night. Two lonely people learning that the loneliest place in the world is a room full of people who do not see you. It was not romance yet, it was recognition. But recognition is where the dangerous things begin. And then came the morning that broke the world open. High in the private floors, the family was holding one of its quiet, tense meetings, the kind where men in dark suits smiled at each other and meant none of it. At the center sat Hoon. Hoon was the man they all feared, the head of Saebyuk, a name that emptied rooms. He had built the family's power over 40 years through patience, silence, and an instinct for who could be trusted, which was almost no one. People crossed streets to avoid his shadow. But Hoon was hiding something. His heart was failing. For months his doctors had warned him, and for months he had buried the truth, because the moment his family smelled weakness, the circling would begin. A dying king is the most dangerous thing in any kingdom. Two men already smelled it. The first was Suho, ambitious, polished, and patient as frost. Suho had spent years positioning himself just close enough to power to take it the instant Hoon fell. He had even arranged an alliance, a planned marriage to a glittering socialite named Bora, to cement his claim to the family when the old man was gone. Suho did not want to murder his way to the top. He was smarter than that. He simply intended to be standing in the right place at the right moment, with the right story, when Hoon's heart finally stopped. The second man who knew was Garam. Garam ran the eyes of the building. Every camera, every locked file, every sealed record passed through his quiet little room of glowing monitors. Garam saw everything and said nothing. He had learned, like Juma, that survival meant being invisible. That morning, Hoon's heart chose its moment. He stood from the table, said he needed air, and walked alone down a private corridor. And there, away from his guards, away from his family, the old man's chest seized, and he went down hard against the cold marble. The first person to find him was Suho. And Suho did the most chilling thing of all. He stopped. He looked down at the dying man who stood between him and everything he wanted, and he hesitated. 1 second. 2. 3. Long, deliberate seconds in which the most powerful man in the city lay gasping at his feet, and his trusted lieutenant did nothing but calculate. But there was someone else in that corridor. Juma was mopping 40 feet away, Ada warm against his chest. He heard the fall. He did not think about who Hoon was, or what the family was, or what it might cost him. He dropped the mop and he ran, all of his enormous frame moving faster than anyone would believe, and he went down on his knees beside the old man. Years fell away. The hospital training came back to his hands. He cleared the airway, he found the rhythm, he kept the blood moving, he poured every ounce of his strength into keeping a stranger alive. And as he worked, baby Ada, frightened by the noise, reached out the way babies do, and her tiny fingers closed around Hoon's hand and would not let go. The old man's eyes, half open, found the baby's face, and something in him, something that had been frozen for 40 years, held on to that little hand like it was the last warm thing on earth. When the paramedics finally burst through the doors, they found the feared head of the Saebyuk group alive, clinging to the hand of a baby, kept breathing by the giant the whole building had been laughing at. And every second of it had been recorded by Garam's cameras. The man they all feared owed his life to the man they all mocked. Nothing in that building would ever be the same. Hoon survived, and when he opened his eyes in a private hospital suite 3 days later, the first thing he asked for was not his family. It was the janitor. This is the part of the story where everything you were promised begins to come true. And if you want to see exactly how a mocked man rises, this is the moment to subscribe. because what happens next is the reason this story exists. Hoon brought Juma into the protected circle, not as a servant, as something the old man did not have a word for yet. He had Juma and Ada moved into safe rooms inside the hotel. He had the mocking staff reassigned, and for the first time the people who had laughed had to watch the janitor walk past them without dancing. It threw Juma and Yuna together constantly. Now they were both inside the same dangerous walls, both watched, both unsure. The rooftop minutes became longer. The honest conversations became something neither of them could name out loud. One evening, with the city burning gold beneath them, Yuna started to tell him something true, something that had been building in her chest for weeks. And Juma leaned in, and for one breath the whole world held still. And then a door opened, and a voice called her name, and the moment shattered like glass. Because someone had been watching, someone always was. Suho had failed to inherit a dead king, so now he set out to destroy a living threat. And the threat, impossibly, was the janitor. Here is where the cruelty turned surgical. Suho's people took Garam's footage of the rescue and they cut it. They trimmed away the saving and kept only the struggle. They slowed it down, they added a caption, and they released it to the world as something monstrous. The giant janitor attacking a helpless old man, manhandling him, robbing him while he was down. The internet that had laughed at Juma now turned on him with something far worse than laughter. Hatred. Threats. His beautiful face froze in mid-motion and shared 1,000,000 times beneath lies. Strangers who had never met him decided they knew exactly who he was. And it got worse. The custody threat against Ada, the one hanging over Juma's entire life, suddenly grew teeth. New lawyers, new money, a sudden aggressive push to take the baby immediately, citing the viral video as proof the father was violent and unstable. Someone powerful was funding it. It was Suho. It had always been going to be Suho. He did not just want Juma gone. He wanted Ada used as the knife. And the final cut, the one that bled the most, was this. The leak had come from inside. Yuna's own personal assistant, a soft-spoken woman Juma had trusted, had been feeding Suho everything. Every rooftop conversation, every private fear, every place Juma was weakest. Sold for a promotion in a family that rewarded betrayal. So let me ask you something, because I genuinely want to know what you think. If you were Juma in this moment, betrayed, lied about, with your baby being used against you by people too rich to ever face consequences, would you run? Or would you stay and fight a war you could not possibly win? Tell me in the comments. Run or fight? I am reading every answer. Juma wanted to run. Every instinct screamed to grab Ada and disappear. But Hoon stopped him. And what Hoon revealed changed everything again. The old man, weak in his bed but sharper than ever, told Juma a secret he had kept from his entire family. For years, Hoon had been quietly watching all of them, testing them, recording who could be bought and who could not. He had a sealed will. He had a hidden ledger. And in it, he had been searching for one thing his money had never once been able to buy. Loyalty that was not for sale. He had found it in a janitor who ran toward a stranger's failing heart, expecting nothing. Hoon did not want Juma to inherit crime. He wanted Juma to become the guardian of the legitimate side of the empire, the clean businesses, the foundations, and most of all, the protector of the family's future. He chose the man everyone mocked over the men who had spent their lives circling him. And in doing so, Hoon painted the biggest target imaginable on Juma and on Ada. Because now Juma was not just a threat to Suho's plan, he was the single greatest obstacle standing between Suho and everything. For a while, it looked like peace might come anyway. Suho was too clever to fight in the open while Hoon still breathed, so he changed tactics. He staged a truce. He issued a polished public apology, admitting the video had been, quote, misleadingly edited by an unknown party. The lies were quietly corrected. Juma's name was cleared online almost as fast as it had been destroyed. And then the family announced a grand celebration, a luxury gala to honor Hoon's recovery, with Juma invited as an honored guest. For one golden night, it looked like the giant had truly won. Yoona found him near the rooftop again, and this time she finished her sentence. She told him that in 3 years inside those walls, he was the only person who had ever made her feel real. And he told her, in his quiet way, that she was the first thing that had ever felt like home that was not his daughter. They did not kiss. They just stood close, two people on the edge of something, finally allowing themselves to believe it might be safe. It was not safe. It was a countdown. Because Suho had not surrendered. He had set a trap, and the apology was the bait. At the gala, beneath the chandeliers and the soft music and the smiling, powerful people, 3 things were quietly clicking into place. First, at the stroke of midnight, Garam's real footage was scheduled to be overwritten, permanently, with the doctored version, erasing the only proof of what truly happened in that corridor. Second, outside the hotel, in a line of black cars under the cold lights, the custody enforcers were waiting, ready to take Ada the instant Juma stepped 1 foot off the property. And third, on the main stage, Bora was about to be presented as the radiant new face of the family, a public coronation designed to erase Yoona entirely and lock the alliance Suho needed. Juma realized it all at once. The apology was not mercy. It was a clock, and the clock was almost out of time. Every exit was watched, every smile in the room was a guard, and his daughter, asleep upstairs in what he thought was safety, was the prize they intended to walk out the door with. I want you to stop for 1 second and just sit with how it feels. To be standing in a beautiful room full of people who are smiling at you while planning to take your child. To be polite and powerless while the richest people alive decide your daughter is a bargaining chip. If that makes something burn in your chest, good. Remember it. Because what these people were willing to do to a baby to protect their power is the truest thing this story has to say about them. Before I tell you how it ends, tell me your prediction in the comments right now. Does Juma get the footage in time, or does Suho win? Lock in your guess, because the next 10 minutes are going to move fast. Juma did not fight with his fists. He had never won anything that way, and he was not going to start now. He fought the way the powerless have always had to fight, with his mind, with his speed, and with the one advantage the rich never see coming. He knew the building from the bottom up. He knew the staff corridors no important person ever noticed. He knew which service doors had no cameras because no one important ever used them. And he had Kato. Kato was the one fellow worker who had stood beside Juma through all of it, who had never laughed, who had shared his lunch on the worst nights. Now Kato moved through the back halls like he owned them, because in every way that mattered, he did. He got Juma past the watched exits. He got word to Yoona. And together, the 3 of them raced for the one person who could end this, Garam. Up in the glowing little room of monitors, Garam sat watching the countdown to midnight tick toward the moment he would be ordered to erase the truth. He had watched Juma for months on those screens. He had seen the man kneel to clean up other people's cruelty. He had seen him run toward a dying stranger. He had seen exactly who hesitated in that corridor, and exactly who saved a life, and exactly who was lying now. Garam had spent his whole career being invisible and obedient, and he was tired. When Juma and Yoona burst into that room with 2 minutes left, they did not have to convince Garam of anything. He had already decided. He simply looked up and he said one word. Finally. What happened next happened in front of everyone. Down in the gala, as Bora stepped toward the stage and Suho lifted his glass to a future he was sure he had won, every enormous screen in the hall suddenly went dark. And then the truth began to play. The real footage, unedited. Suho hesitating over the dying body of the man he served, calculating, doing nothing while seconds bled away. Then documents, the sealed financing records Garam had quietly kept, showing Suho's money behind the custody attack, his name behind the leak, his hands behind all of it. The whole beautiful room watched the most powerful smile in it curdle into something small and afraid. And then a frail voice cut through the silence. Hoon had come. Against every doctor's order, the man they all feared rose from a wheelchair at the edge of the room, and the entire family went still, because no one had ever once disobeyed that face. He summoned the last of his strength, and in front of all of them, he named Juma the protected guardian of the legitimate Saebyeok Empire, and he declared the safety of the child Ada untouchable by anyone in that family, on pain of losing everything. He looked directly at Suho when he said it. The alliance collapsed in real time. Bora, who had only ever loved power, stepped away from Suho the instant the power moved, and pretended she had never stood beside him. The men who had backed Suho melted into the crowd. And outside, when the call went out, the black cars carrying the custody enforcers were turned away from the gates, their paperwork suddenly worthless against the full weight of a family that had chosen its protector. Suho did not rage. Men like Suho never do. He simply set down his glass, understanding at last that the giant he had laughed at had beaten him with the one thing he could never buy or fake. People who chose to stand with Juma because they wanted to. He walked out alone, and the doors closed behind the most feared rising power in the city, as if he had never mattered at all. If this story is reaching the place inside you it was meant to reach, send it to one person who has ever been judged by how they look, or how much they have, or the work they do with their hands. Someone who has been laughed at and kept their dignity anyway. They will understand why it had to end like this. In the quiet weeks that followed, the empire steadied. Hoon's heart remained fragile, and he knew his time was short, so he stepped back from power, but he lived, and for the first time in 40 years, he was at peace. He had spent a lifetime feared by everyone and trusted by no one, and in the end, the only people who had truly seen him were a janitor who saved him for nothing, and a baby who held his hand because she did not know to be afraid. The custody threat against Ada dissolved completely. With Suho's secret financing exposed, the lawyers vanished, the case collapsed, and a judge closed the matter for good. Ada was safe. She would stay with the father who had carried her through every cruel night. Juma was no longer a janitor, but he did not become one of them either. He took the role Hoon gave him on his own terms, guardian of the clean and the honest parts, refusing every shadow he was offered, building something he could be proud to leave his daughter. The men in expensive suits who had once filmed him for laughs now lowered their eyes when he passed, and he never once made them dance. That was the difference between him and the people who had ruled before. He remembered what it felt like to be small, and he refused to make anyone else feel it. And Yuna, finally free of the cage and the alliance that had been built to trap her, walked the rooftop one last evening with the man who had seen her when she was a ghost. There were no cameras left watching them, no family deciding their worth. Just a city glittering below, and a baby laughing in a sling, and two people who had earned, at last, the right to choose each other. This time, no door opened. No voice called her name. He told her he loved her, plainly, the way he did everything. And she told him she had loved him since the morning he ran toward a stranger's heart, expecting nothing in return. In the very last moment, in a quiet family room far from marble and chandeliers, old Hoon sat holding Ada once more, her tiny fingers wrapped around his, exactly as they had been in the corridor where everything began. And on the table beside him sat a single sealed envelope, with one line written on the front. For Ada, when she is older. No one opened it. Some things are meant to wait. Some promises are meant to be kept long after the people who made them are gone. They had laughed at the fat black janitor. They had filmed him, mocked him, and tried to take the only thing he loved. And in the end, the man they laughed at saved the king they feared, won the heart they thought he could never reach, and stood taller than every person who had ever looked down on him. Not because he became powerful, but because he was always, quietly, the strongest person in the room. If this story moved you, do not let it stay only with you. Like it, share it, and subscribe, because there is always another forgotten person out there waiting for the world to finally see them. And maybe, the next time you walk past someone everyone else is laughing at, you will remember Juma, and you will be the one who stops.